very good afternoon to everyone who's joined us for this live panel discussion organized by Motor India and EV Tech News, powered by Here Technologies. The theme for today's session is a very popular topic: electric vehicles, challenges, opportunities, and the role of location. And we have a distinguished set of experts who've joined us here from the EV industry to share interesting insights on the topic. A warm welcome to our esteemed panelists, our moderator, and our presenter for today. Thank you very much for joining us and taking time out from your busy schedules. This is how the agenda for today's session looks like. We will start off with a brief presentation by our partner Here Technologies. Then we'll have our panel discussion for about an hour, followed by audience Q&A towards the end of the session. I'd like to quickly introduce our speakers for today. Our presenter will be Ms. Sulaizah Saptoe, Senior Product Marketing Lead for Transport and Logistics at Here Technologies. Sulaizah is based out of Singapore and has nearly 20 years of experience in product management, product marketing, and product development from a number of reputed multinational brands in the field of electronics and communication. In her presentation, she will help us understand the role of location in enabling a sustainable transportation ecosystem. Over to our panelists. We have 4 panelists for the discussion part of today's session. First up, we have Dr. Deb Mukherji, a former flight lieutenant in the Indian Air Force and currently an entrepreneur with immense knowledge and hands-on experience, handling the role of managing director at Omega Seiki Mobility, one of the fastest growing brands in the electric three-wheeler space in India. While Dr. Mukherji will give an OEM perspective in today's discussion, he can also share insights on pretty much all aspects of the EV ecosystem. So it's an absolute pleasure having you with us, Dr. Mukherji. Next, we have Mr. Abhijit Sengupta, who is Director and Head of Business for the SAARC region at Here Technologies. Abhijit is based out of Singapore and brings over 2 decades of experience in sales and business development, product management, and product operations. Our partner Here Technologies, being a global leader in location technology, it would be interesting to listen to Abhijit on how his company is partnering customers in the EV domain, especially given the burgeoning growth in the segment in India. So we look forward to listening to you, Abhijit. Thank you so much for your presence.
Thank you.
Then we have Mr. Milind Paranjape, who is Director Transportation at FM Logistic India, which is a subsidiary of FM Logistic of France, a globally successful service provider in warehousing, transportation, and co-packing businesses with presence in 14 countries worldwide. Milind is a transportation specialist. He has over 25 years of experience in the logistics and supply chain industry, ranging from express cargo, third-party logistics, warehousing, road transportation, etc. He adds a different dimension to our panel as he will be the voice of the customer and bring in a consumer angle in today's discussion. And that's something we're really looking forward to listening to Mr. Milind. And we also have with us Mr. Varun Chaturvedi, founder and CEO of Volttic, one of the leading EV charging service providers in India. Volttic is a homegrown company and currently operates over 200 EV charge points across India. The company has big plans to scale up and grow in line with the government's e-mobility vision. Varun also brings a very important perspective and will share his knowledge and experience on the charging infrastructure side of the EV ecosystem. So I'm sure there are a lot of people, very keen on knowing how the charging infrastructure is actually getting developed in the country, Varun. And to moderate today's discussion, we have with us Ms. Hetal Gandhi, Director, CRISIL Research. Hetal has spent over a decade at CRISIL, and her experience is spread from consumption-linked sectors like automobiles, auto components, and agri inputs, all the way to technology-linked verticals like telecom and IT. Electric vehicles and electromobility is one of her specialization and key focus areas, which is why we have her as our moderator today. Thank you so much, Hetal. A quick word about CRISIL Research. They are India's largest independent and integrated research house with strong domain expertise on the Indian economy, industries, and capital markets. They deliver perspectives and insights to over 1,200 domestic and global clients through a range of research reports, analytical tools, subscription products, and customized solutions. And we're delighted to have them as our knowledge partner for today's session. As always, some information for the audience. We will be taking up questions from your side towards the end of the session. So please keep the questions coming in. Request you to share them in the Q&A section on your Zoom screen. And we will definitely try and take up as many questions as possible at the end of the session. I'd also like to mention that apart from the audience on the Zoom platform, our session is being watched live by an additional set of audience on Motor India's official video channel on YouTube. So without further ado, I hand over to Sulaizah for her presentation, and wishing you all a very, very engaging session. Thank you.
Thank you, Bala. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. It's a very good afternoon to have all of you. And it's my honor and pleasure to be presenting today a brief session on HERE technologies and our impact and contributions towards making a sustainable transportation ecosystem. In the next few minutes, I'd like to provide you some ideas and even proof points on how location can make a big impact to your business and why HERE technologies, location data and platform is different from what you may be using today, more so towards a sustainable transportation ecosystem. So what we are experiencing right now and in the past few years and decades is global warming. So global warming and air pollution are the growing concerns around the world. And APAC has a huge challenge because every year for many weeks or months, large countries like India, Indonesia, Thailand, even China are covered by toxic haze. Smaller island nations even must deal with the rising seawater levels due to the global warming. Growth in the e-commerce, complex supply chains with increased demands on urban mobility are forcing stakeholders to rethink transportation and even business models. Working towards a more sustainable transportation ecosystem is now the need of the hour. So while the impact of the climate change is important conversation happening across the mobility ecosystem, achieving these sustainable development goals is proving to be more difficult than expected. Because in addition, a worldwide pandemic is both impeding this progress and providing the need for a safe and sustainable mobility. For example, with freight volumes expected to multiply in the next few years, the public and private sectors must join forces to optimize distribution models and sustainable transport. Because we must think of our social duty in balancing customer demand and sustainable transportation in the transport ecosystem. But what I believe is that electrification of our personal vehicles and commercial fleets is important to achieve a transportation state that we want. Because the good news is that there is an increased momentum in this becoming a reality. Because first, the EV vehicles are becoming affordable. And second, the user experience is getting better. Because the primary concern of battery range are now being addressed. But if you take a look into the demand side of things, and in this chart, it shows the reflex of the buying sentiments of customers. Because in the average of September 2020 last year, we have done the survey and we look into about 50% of potential car buyers interviewed saying that they're now considering to buy a battery EV. And this number is much higher in large countries like India and China. But let's say looking into the supply side of it. So despite COVID-19 pandemic having a major impact on two-wheeler, we see that electric two-wheeler market will still gain momentum as economy recovers. We have new players, newer models from existing OEMs will be expected to boost sales further. Now, geographically, if we dig deeper into the global electric vehicle powertrain market, the APAC region actually will spearhead the market over the forecast period in the next few years. Now, understanding the specific local needs for early demand and adapting it will be the key to making effective target investments, matching this demand and supply and enabling quick returns on the investments. Now, whatever we said is good. However, it's not easy because multiple challenges has to be overcome to ensure sustained growth in the EV adoption. Now, when we look across the value chain from mobility provider, infrastructure providers, tech enablers, city authorities, now across these key groups, the key challenge is to match say, the demand for charging the EV with the supply of the charging infrastructure. And this demand and supply matching is also one of the biggest problems in adoption and the usage of the EV vehicles. Like for us in Hetal Technologies, when we look into providing a solution for EV, we start with a platform that provides seamless access to all enterprise-grade location data from here, as well as external from a third-party providers, maybe such as the sensor data from your company. Because a scalable location platform can be instrumental in matching this demand generated by the EV drivers to the supply from the charging infrastructure providers. And here platform provide access to HERE's own location data and services, as well as allowing third-party players to host and distribute their location assets via the HERE marketplace. And this static and dynamic data is then aggregated and delivered via our HERE location services to the end consumers and businesses. And we also have a static data product with global database of EV charging stations. Now, right now, we not only provide static information like pricing and connector types, but also dynamic availability of charging station in certain countries. And this is very important because for the charging infrastructure providers, this is a great service to help distribute your latest network details to your end target drivers, say via real-time, secure, and global EV charging stations. And when we look into further improvement, now we can't go about without addressing a natural human reaction called anxiety. And with the conversion from normal fuel to electric vehicle, we want to assure drivers that we can reduce this anxiety. And in here, we provide access to this solution, providing drivers information and features via HERE routing. Like for example, what's the fastest route, where are the charging stations, and whether they are equipped with fast or slow charging points. And this is a bit of customization towards this consumption model. And through the above factors, we provide the optimum route that matches the battery level with the routes and even the preferred providers. And if we look into the EV routing, we look into the consumption level. Looking at the map in purple below, if we visualize them in an isoline routing or a range map, we can see the difference of reachability with EV and traffic data. And traffic in Mumbai is always high, so the difference is not so much in the isoline, but in other areas, you can see a lot of difference. And multi-stop routing within the EV is important because it gives you the elevation plot for the route, which is also being taken into account. So if you look into the orange line, and where the purple line, it indicates the battery charging level. So what it helps you to do is to give you a lot of multiple use cases. When you do stopovers, when you need support for where you need to have a battery swapped, and so on. And all in all, in the EV routing, we enable, through our decades of mapping and routing experience, information about the EV that can be covered and the most effective routing that the EV vehicle can perform with the battery consumption. And all of this working together reduces the driver's fear of running out of charge and enhance the driver's experience. And last but not least, I just want to summarize, that HERE is committed to enabling a sustainable transportation solutions in the EV ecosystem through our location platform offering. And you have an EV infrastructure provider or an EV transportation service provider, even an OEM or policymaker, we would love to partner and engage further with you in enabling and scaling up further greener rides for our consumers and fleets. So thank you. And here I would like to hand it over to Ms. Hetal, our moderator for the panel discussion.
Thank you, Sulaizah. I think that was a wonderful presentation. So a very warm welcome to the audience. Hope you all enjoyed the presentation. Now let's get going with the panel discussion with our esteemed panelists for today. Over the past 2 years, COVID-19 has changed the way we think on issues in a way that has also accelerated our drive as a human race towards climate change. Globally, corporates are promising net zero by 2050 or even earlier. Even large corporates in India are talking about net zero by 2035. Indian government, on the other hand, is aggressively pursuing renewable energy targets and are trying to reduce GHG emissions via industrial emission reduction as well as transportation emission reduction. Now, it is important to note that CO2 emissions from energy are the largest contributor of GHG emissions. But transportation also has a 15% share in CO2 emissions, largely driven by vehicles on road. While their share may appear to be lower, the share of carbon emission from transportation has nearly doubled for India over the last decade. And that is what makes it a pretty grim problem. With low motor penetration, the situation is only expected to worsen as we go ahead in the next decade. This clearly highlights the need for electric vehicles or usage of cleaner fuels from fossil fuels, which are today a large proportion of the transportation sector in India. India is clearly at a crossroad. So with this background, and amid a number of announcements from the Government of India, let's start our session for the day. I have divided the session into 3 distinct parts so that we can have assimilated views of the panelists on each of them. The first part would deal about electric vehicles. What is the kind of potential we see from an India point of view? The second section, we will deal on the role of ecosystem. And the third section, we will speak about the role that the government can play from an EV penetration enabler point of view. So let's begin with our panelist and view on EV sales in India. I would like to start with Dr. Mukherji. My first question goes to him. How do we believe will be the penetration of electric vehicles in India over the next decade? And which segments, in your view, would adopt EVs faster, sir?
Yeah, thank you, Hetal. I am Dr. Mukherji, and I head the Omega Seiki Mobility, the electric vehicle manufacturing company in India. So electric vehicle, as you rightly said, have been talked about a lot in last few years, and pandemic has only accelerated the the discussion on various aspects of this electric transition to electric from the IC engines. Now this is, as I see, is going to be the most significant shift that we will see in next few decades in the context of mobility. Automobiles have been in existence for more than 100 years, but this is the most significant development that we are seeing, having a very profound impact on our lives. Human beings need to move. There's a necessity for various reasons, and that's how we grow. Coming to the point of transition and how we see in the context of India, I think it is very important to understand the various aspects. As I see, there is an economic opportunity, then there is a technology opportunity, then there is socio-political, and last but not the least is the environmental opportunity. On the economic side, obviously electric vehicles are cheaper to run, so this is definitely a big enabler, a big driver to electrification, changeover from the IC engines. And with the petroleum products, petrol, diesel, etc., the price is increasing practically every day. So in India, definitely we have a problem with the IC engine vehicles. So I do see there is a great economic opportunity. The potential has been talked about somewhere ranging from 100 billion to 500 billion US dollars. So that kind of data people are talking about. I do see that it is definitely a big driver towards electrification, particularly in the segments which are commercial vehicle driven, like two-wheelers and three-wheeler, in the last mile, for example, driven by e-commerce companies. So that is where we are seeing maximum traction. today. But going forward, I do see that the industry will consolidate and move towards more, heavier payloads, mid-range trucks, and also the personal mobility segment. So that's as far as the economic opportunity. Then coming to the technology, see, technology has been a big driver today. The technology is mature. We have the battery technology, powertrain technology, and the whole IT and software that runs the vehicle. So it's and also batteries are improving every day. We see the charge density, the various technologies, chemistries which are coming in, lithium ion and others like graphene, etc. Solid state is coming. So the electric vehicle is again a huge opportunity to develop the technology. Then obviously the political and social, it generates a lot of new employment in the context of Indian automotive industry. We have batteries and the entire supply chain produces. See, we also have to see that it's just not the replacement of one versus one. We are not talking about replacing one IC engine with one electric engine. That's not the way to really go about it. We need to talk about more of public transport, more of sorry, the mass transportation system, and how to make it efficient. So that there lies the opportunity. And environment aspect, you touched in your initial talk. Obviously, pandemic has really taught us that if we really need to do something, this is the time, and we need to reboot, reset the system. So as you said, transportation, the automobile contribute 15 to 20% or something like that. So this is a major emission channel, and which has to be acted upon by various governments and agencies. And economists have generally agreed that taxation helps, but or various fiscal benefits, subsidies, etc., help to accelerate the alternate mobility. For example, today's battery, tomorrow hydrogen. I don't know. Maybe some other will come. So sort of summarize what I think is that India has a great chance, not only for the Indian, our country, but also become a very large global player in this whole segment, which somehow we did not become in the IC engine, even though we are fourth or fifth largest car maker and number one two-wheeler maker, etc. But we have been largely domestic market oriented, because the in-house demand has been pretty significant. But I feel that this is a chance to become a serious global player in the component sector, and make products for the global markets. As far as the percentages are concerned, government wants something like 80% of conversion, but personally I think around 50% of two and three wheelers should be converted in by 2030, and trucks and all probably around 10%. So this is my view. But government has obviously far aggressive targets of 80%.
Aggressive plans.
Aided by FAME and other incentive. Let's see how it pans out. We need a complete ecosystem to develop in line with this. So that's all I.
Yeah. So Dr. Mukherji, you made two very important points. One, that segments like two-wheelers, three-wheelers, buses are the segments where you will see adoption that is much faster. Two segments where commercial usage is higher could see adoption much faster. And three, of course, the numbers where you said almost 50% of two-wheelers and three-wheelers could be electric by the time we reach 2030. Now, clearly, as you highlighted, there has to be economic viability behind this. And what we have seen until now is that government wants to push it more on the viability agenda than on an incentive agenda. So do you believe that batteries that account for a larger proportion of the total cost will see a significant downward revision in prices, thus making it more affordable for the price sensitive Indian consumer, who is very different than what a global consumer is like? So what is your view on battery cost and therefore impact on EV purchase cost?
Yeah, it's a very important part of the whole EV discussion, Hetal. It is on the supply side. If we see Then batteries and powertrains, they are more than 2/3 of the whole vehicle cost. And battery particularly is occupies a big share of cost in the whole cost chain. The problem in India has been the battery price as well as the battery availability. So we have to, and both are interlinked. Obviously, if you don't manufacture in India using internal materials or resources, obviously you have to import, and those are not really. Import is a very expensive hobby. So as far as the battery costs are concerned, certainly there is a downward shift. Starting from, if you go back around 20 years, it was somewhere around $1,200 per kilowatt hours. Today we are at $250, and there are speculations or predictions that it will hit below $100 or something. So certainly I'm very optimistic overall, on two counts. One is the cost itself is showing a downtrend, which is obvious because as the scale increases, the costs should come down. We have seen in pretty many other sectors, computers, cell phones, electronic goods, etc., etc. So it typically follows that curve of downward trend once the scale comes to a particular level, or we call it inflection point. So I think the inflection point is just around the corner, and the batteries will hit a downward or trend of somewhere around below 200, and then eventually 100. Another important point that I see here is the use of other chemistries, like non cobalt based and other technologies. Graphene is showing a lot of potential. So I think overall we see a very healthy trend, and India government has just come out with the PLI scheme, and we are seeing a lot of new announcements being talked about. Reliance has made a huge commitment towards it, and I think that's going to be a game changer. And other large corporates are also coming up with their plans, and that is how the scale will come up with technology. This is the power of disruptive technology. Disruptive technology brings the scale, at the same time brings the cost down. So that's where I do see the industry 5 years from now, below $100. That's my
So I think, thank you so much, Dr. Mukherji. That quickly brings us to people who have already started to commit about using electric vehicles. And adoption of EVs, as was pointed out by Dr. Mukherji as well, would come up first within the commercial users. FM Logistics also announced somewhere around in April 21 of EV fleets within city limits. So I would like to hear from Milind on how cost dynamics are changing with the EV fleet, and what are the practical problems that they are facing when they are beginning to use EV fleets within the city limits also. Over to you, Milind.
Thank you, Hetal. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. So quickly before I begin, I think Sulaizah made a very interesting presentation. Bala, thanks for the introduction, and Dr. Deb made some very good points. One of which was that e-com is mainly driving EVs in the commercial vehicle sector. When I talk of EVs, I'll refer to the commercial vehicle sector. So you're right, Hetal. Adoption of EVs is happening within city limits first. And like you said, in line with that, FM has decided to invest in a fleet of vehicles, EVs, in phases. There's a huge amount of interest that we see from our customers, that is FMCG or durables or electronics and so on. And bringing in the practical aspect, what we do see along with that is that the conversion of this intent into orders does take some time. So with non-e-com customers, we see a need to pilot electric vehicles first. And within city gives them the right controlled environment, I would say, to monitor this pilot closely. The question we need to answer as customers or as transporters is, why is there a need for a pilot? When you see buses which are EV, or you see personal cars which are EV, why is there a need to pilot felt by the industry? And that brings us to the practical problems that you mentioned, Hetal. So there's a need felt by our customers for conviction on some basic criteria. And till business considers EVs dependable and considers them as hands-off for service delivery, this need to pilot will continue. So what are the criteria they evaluate a vehicle on typically? These are very basic criteria: the ability to carry the rated load, to drive the given range without a hitch, the charging time, any other glitches that they might face. In case of reefers, the maintenance of temperature while driving that range. Then lack of visibility of a charging infrastructure is what our customers have at the back of the mind. They don't verbalize it during discussions, but these are things happening at the back of their minds, and therefore they go for pilots. And of course, not the least, conviction on the final delivered costs. So like you said, on the cost dynamics, the running cost of EVs compared to a diesel vehicle is probably 1/6 as a number, a rough number. Given that the running costs are low per kilometer on a full charge, and the maintenance costs are low since there are no moving parts, like we all know.
Correct.
But having said that, presently the commercial EVs that have been launched for mass consumption, that is off-the-shelf approach, like Dr. Dev said, are mainly three-wheeler EVs. And if you compare this with the competition, which is how business sees it, what do you have in competition? It is the darling of the within city distribution segment, which is the Tata Ace or equivalent vehicles that has a capacity of 800 kg to 1 ton. Now, this competition is about 50% more in weight capacity and probably 60% more in volume capacity. So though the absolute costs are lower, when you look at per kg per kilometer cost or per CFT, per volume per kilometer cost, it ends up being nearly the same as for a diesel vehicle. So our customer, when he goes back and does his maths, as of now, as of today, with three-wheeler e-vehicles being the main launch, the customer does not see a definite advantage. And as transporters, as logistics service providers, we give a derived demand. I mean, our customer pushes us and then we demand for these vehicles.
Correct.
So what I believe is that the cost advantage will clearly be visible when a 1 metric ton or higher capacity vehicle is launched and available commercially off the shelf. There are a few EV manufacturers who have such vehicles available, but they are not, amply available as something that can be consumed easily. So the combination of this need to pilot EVs, to measure it on, let's say, the key success criteria for an electric vehicle, and let's say the not so clear cost advantage as of today, given the low capacity, volume and weight capacity of the commercial EVs, which have been launched on a mass scale, that is leading to a slower adoption compared to the potential of the EVs. But having said that, what I would say is it's a journey with a lot of focus on climate change, rising fuel costs. Fuel is touching 100 now, which has happened over the past 6 months. Things are evolving at a very fast pace, like Dr. Mukherji said, on the battery technology, on charging, like some of our other panelists are going to put forth now. So I'm very confident that EVs will finally come out the winner. And it's a matter of time, and it is up to us to decide the path and the speed of that path. So it's an ecosystem, like someone else said. But yes, there's huge potential. How we traverse that ecosystem, again, he made a very interesting point that we did not become a global player in the internal combustion engine part of the game. So here's an opportunity for us. How we go about it depends on the whole ecosystem, government, consumers, logistics players like us. But I think I'm very positive about the whole thing.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thanks, Milind. I think that there were wonderful points made over here. It's very encouraging to hear that like-to-like comparisons, even today, a three-wheeler EV vis-a-vis a Tata Ace equivalent is actually giving, more or less equal cost, which is giving us a clear indication that once we have more branded vehicles launched in the same category, same payload category, costs are going to run down. But this is a genuine challenge, and the challenge of anxiety in the minds of the consumer. That brings me to the next question. Will I get a charging point? What if I run out of my battery? Where is the next charging station? Can a particular payload be carried in an electric vehicle? Will it allow me to carry the same payloads? There are so many anxieties in the mind of the consumer. So I would like to hear from Abhijit and experiences that your technologies has had internationally in terms of how technology can play a role to actually take care of these anxieties of customers. Some part of it was highlighted during the presentation, but would like to hear more from you, Abhijit, on some international use cases which can bring about clearly how anxieties in the mind of customer can reduce. Over to you.
Sure, thank you, Hetal. Many points which are nicely put forward by Dr. Mukherji and also Milind, and it gave us a much broader perspective in terms of how the ecosystem is looking at BEV or EV, be it the commercial vehicle segment or two-wheeler, three-wheeler, etc., plus also the entire ecosystem topic. Now, here Technologies has been in the location platform business for many, many years, and we have been working with multiple large OEMs globally for many, many years. For other use cases, we've been traditionally, turn-by-turn navigation-based use cases. Now, in the current context of BEV or EV, when we talked about and you mentioned about the anxiety topic, and it's very relevant and it's also real. The real is because it's a huge change management topic in the consumer's mind, or the driver's mind, or the operator's mind, or the transporter's mind. Because for years and years, the ways of working has been defined in a certain way. The daily routines have been defined in a certain way, and it takes time to do that change management, and especially from in the change curve from anxiety to and getting used to it. Now, how do we facilitate this conversation? So in multiple ways. So one is, of course, which Sulaizah was mentioning in her presentation, in terms of very simply mapping where the charging stations are. That's just a starting point, and probably the easiest point to start with, because working with the aggregators and working with these charging station providers, it's easy to map. But we go a level further. We are able to provide routing based on these charging stations. Now, when I think about a traditional route, which otherwise would have been done without factoring those charging stations, would be very, very different when we start to factor the charging station in the routing algorithm. Now, these algorithms are pretty complex algorithms. And if I just take this scenario and map it to a commercial three-wheeler segment, which I think Milind was talking about, and there was a cost comparison between before and after. If the ecosystem moves to be EV, will that be same, etc. But if we then overlay our routing algorithm, which is EV aware, EV charging stations aware, and then we look at a few other algorithms on the services like the matrix routing, etc., etc. This becomes more efficient. So the total cost of ownership over a period of time, be it the per unit cost of running the business or per unit cost of running a vehicle, etc., is a significantly better. It also helps to for many platforms, for example, the delivery platform, because multiple delivery platforms would be using the two-wheeler for the last mile. I think it was mentioned by Dr. Mukherji as well. Those get more efficient. The consumers and the delivery partners or the delivery drivers, who are the key stakeholders as far as that ecosystem is concerned, they are more, I would say, at ease, because it becomes more efficient and there could be some cost benefit, etc., etc. So in summary, the value which we bring on the table is because of our location platform, which is able to use these set of location information more smartly, intelligently. And last but not the least is our platform, which I mentioned, and that's very, very important. Look, our job is to empower the ecosystem and all the key stakeholders, and we believe it is very, very important. I think at some point of time when we talk about that, many of these EVs are going to be connected vehicles. And when these connected vehicles start talking to various data providers or set of information which these vehicles will start to use, that opens up a multiple opportunities for the aggregators or the OEMs as well as the ecosystem. So that's how I will put the points forward.
Yeah, so I think we are clearly sitting on good enough cushioned bubble of savings, which would come by usage of electric vehicles itself. Once costs start reducing, as Mr. Mukherji pointed out, that in turn will enable adoption. Adoption would bring about logistics savings for commercial users, as highlighted by Milind, and additional savings which will come up by marrying technology with the transition of electric vehicle altogether. Now that then brings me to the importance of ecosystem in adoption of electric vehicles, and we have seen this in the past as well. It always becomes a chicken and an egg situation. We had 4G that came up in India, and everybody kept asking that, okay, is it going to be the cheaper phones that is going to drive adoption of 4G, or it is going to be services launched by players that is going to drive adoption of 4G? And once the ball started rolling, things started falling in place, and here we are today with 80% 4G penetration. Abhijit did speak about connected vehicles, and India is talking about having 5G also. So, parameters on the ecosystem are falling in place from the connectivity point of view also. But let's come back to the base or the root of ecosystem where everybody is worried, and which is, how are we going to have all these charging stations, and how fast can I actually charge my battery? Are there significant innovations coming in this front? Varun Chaturvedi, could you come in and throw some light on dynamics of establishing charging infrastructure in the country? And also, what kind of innovations can be expected in terms of faster charging of batteries and therefore help consumers to be on the go very fast? Over to you, Varun.
Yeah, thanks, Hetal. So, good question you ask, because lots of people come with a mindset that whether how fast they can charge. But I think before me, Mr. Deb and Milind already mentioned that the first adoption is coming from the commercial segment. So we have to first understand whether everybody is right now required a fast charging, or only we can start with some particular segment. So beauty of EV is that you can own a fuel station at your home. Means you can charge your EV at your home. So you need not to go every time to a commercial fuel station. So for a personal segment, first thing is that he can, if you have such kind of facility, means at their parking, they can develop a home charger. So that is one thing. Means they typically require a fast charging station when they are traveling between cities or on a highway. But right now, the major fast charging requirement is coming from the commercial segment, because they are the first mover. And as Milind clearly mentioned, Mr. Deb also mentioned that they have clear-cut advantage right now, driving a EV in terms of saving a fuel efficiency already is there, and maintenance cost. Now, how fast we can charge a EV is a little bit both-sided. From EV itself, means EV battery technology, lots of R&D is going on, lots of new batteries changes are coming on right now in India. It's a mixed kind of EVs are available, like some are supporting only slow chargings, especially on the two-wheeler, three-wheeler segments. But as Omega City is coming with a fast charging facility, they are, I heard that news. So that's where the battery technology is going to play a crucial role, how fast they can be charged, and then how the fuel or power going to inject from the charger. So charger is totally a proportionate, business which is already driven or governed by Indian standards or government standards. So we are following that. Only fast charging means you can increase the rate in terms of kilowatt, and CE rating means how fast you are charging. So right now we have options available, charging technologies are available, and with the coming time, with the battery, technology advancement, there will be a more fast charging facility. But same time, we have to see that who is really required of fast charging, because there is a battery life constraint already on the fast charging. So we have to save the battery life as well. So if you are a personal user, you don't need a fast charging every time. But yeah, commercial charging, a commercial operator, they always need a fast charging. And for them, as a Volttic, we are developing for all commercial and personal segments. We are catering all home charger as well. Home charging is best suited for housing society, real estates, and RWAs. Now government is pushing for that, so that people feel always comfort. Even workplace charging is also going to happen. Lots of corporates are now developing charging facilities at their parking area for their employees, for their transport fleets. And then the commercial charging segments, where we are right now looking to put across the cities or highways, mostly right now within the cities, because of range and travel limitations from the user. Commercial operators, different segments are there. Their use case are different. So like logistic have a limited run within cities, or commercial B2B segment, they are also running within cities, implied transportations. B2C, their routes are not limited, but they are trying to develop, fixed routes or in-route charging, hub charging. So we are already catering to them with commercial charging station. But yeah, it will take time, because we have to understand the infrastructure challenge as well. So it is not going to happen a large number. As a business, India is, whatever the reports are showing, that by 2030, we require 2.9 million, almost 3 million charging stations. So there is opportunities as well. But yeah, fast charging in coming time, there will be lots of options available. Charger rating will be increased. Right now, it is mostly limited to 15 to 30 kilowatt. Then it will raise to 50 kilowatt, 100 kilowatt. For buses, it is 150 or 240 right now used. So both are interlinked, chargers and the battery technology. So this is the answer to your question. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Varun, for that. Let me play a devil's advocate. And when I'm saying devil's advocate, why should we think only from the point of adopting electric vehicles? This question is directed to Dr. Mukherji. Government has been talking about all kinds of cleaner fuels, and the latest one that they have been speaking about is ethanol blending targets. They are talking about aggressively preponing ethanol blending targets to almost 20% by 2023 itself. They are also talking about having a separate biofuel policy to increase numbers even beyond that. In fact, for the two-wheeler segment, they are talking about almost 50% blending, E50. So that is another area that is being developing. They are also providing incentives for setting different category of molasses-based plants, which means that you are going to have better conversion from sugar into ethanol. So how do you see this entire thing impacting the ICV cost? Some of the reports and statements coming up from agencies like Niti Aayog itself talks about that, if there is a 2% or 3% incremental blending which is being done, then it can reduce the price of fuel by almost 1 to 2 rupees. So, how do you see these competing cleaner fuels coming in? Over to you, Mr. Mukherji.
Yeah, Hetal, I think it's an important point that you have raised. While everybody is definitely aligned on the non-fossil fuel adoption generally, but and currently battery seems to be high on the high on everybody's agenda and on the technology ladder as well. But there are other fuels or other energy sources, and various combinations are also important to look at, especially in the context of India, where it is not just possible to shut down all the IC engine, the fuel stations and the entire infrastructure and switch over to electric immediately. Because of various challenges that we have on the ground to set up the infrastructure, run them efficiently, etc. It takes time here. India being a federal state, the role of state also comes in. Even though the central government may come out with a policy, but the states also have a role to play. There are many many issues which are dual centric, dual listed state as well as the center. So in that context, I am with this idea that we should also look at making the IC engines more efficient, less polluting, as well as cost competitive in the interim. As the EV transition takes place, at the same time, we should not completely ignore the IC engine. If there is a technology available, then why not do it? And particularly, we know that last 3 or 4 years, the auto industry has invested significant amount of money and resources in upgrading to BS6, Bharat 6, which, we jumped from 4 to 6. So that is where I think this is a great step. And I'd also like to compliment the ministry that, they have been very, very consistent. One thing we have to appreciate, this government has been very consistent in its approach towards this whole renewable energy usage, particularly in the automotive segment. We saw first BS6, then we saw the electric, and the incentives are on both the supply side as well as demand side. On the supply side, we have the battery, we have the FAME2 for related to the powertrain. Then on the demand side, we have the incentives on the charging stations, and also the other fiscal as well as the interest deduction, etc. So I do see that ethanol, India being a surplus country for as far as sugar production is concerned, and a lot of it is either very inefficiently handled or even just dumped. We have had cases where farmers have just burned the entire the produce because there was no market or the market crashed. So in that background, I think it's a great idea. And the blending, as you rightly said, brings about a cost benefit to the user, as well as the emissions are pretty much reduced. So I think given the availability of resource or the raw material, I think it's a great opportunity in the interim, as we go on developing the infrastructure for EV and take care of the other issues, as also the technology will evolve quickly. As Varun said, the fast charging and all. I believe that next 4 or 5 years, fast charging or a particular charging which can be, in between the today's normal charging and the today's fast charging, somewhere in between, it will settle down. So you don't have to talk about fast charging at all. So, or rather, not worry about the charge anxiety, and we will have a range comfort from range anxiety. So to answer your question, I am really sort of happy with this idea of ethanol blending.
Yeah, so coexistence of two technologies, at least on the personal front. Milind, similarly, you spoke about comparison between diesel and electric. But we also have CNG, which is a large segment on the commercial side of it specifically. And government has again announced huge targets on refueling stations to be increased within city limits. Do you believe that CNG can give tough competition in terms of EV adoption in the smaller commercial vehicle segment? How do you believe choices would go between CNG, which is an existing cleaner fuel, versus adopting electric vehicles on the commercial side?
Hetal, I think very good question. before I get into the response to that question, a couple of points that my previous panelists made. One, Abhijit made a very important point about empowering the ecosystem. I love that. Providing a global map of charging stations. So request somehow the OEMs we talk to are not able to provide us such a map. So I don't know where the gap is, but that's okay. I'm sure that gap will be crossed. And the third point was on EVs being interconnected or connected vehicles. So that looks interesting. And Varun made an important point on fast charging, and commercial vehicle provide users needed fast charging. And that is very true. We can't do without fast charging, because with a range of 80 kilometers, we are always thinking about, covering ourselves. And so fast charging is a must. But now to CNG. So CNG is surely a cleaner fuel compared to, say, petrol or diesel, the other fossil fuels. Nevertheless, it still emits greenhouse gases. So I wouldn't say it's an apple-to-apple comparison. EVs, however, are zero-emission vehicles, which we all know. So CNG cannot really be considered as a replacement for EVs on the environment front for the long term. But as we saw during the course of our discussion, it will take some time to build the necessary infrastructure for fast charging in half an hour, like say Tesla is doing in the US, or launch higher capacity EVs. So with a combination of these two, industry, when I say industry, I mean business, the consumers. And I don't refer to e-com here, because the decision-making criteria there are different. The market they serve is different, but general rest of the industry, on the criteria of both cost and pollution, I believe are likely to take a middle path approach compared to ideal. That is, I believe, always how business works. You might not be able to do the ideal thing the first shot, the first time. So you take a middle path, whatever is a little easily implementable. With CNG and with the increase in the number of fueling stations that the government plans to have in CNG, we surely see a possibility of a cost reduction. CNG is cheaper, the mileage is better. There are other challenges, but there's surely a possibility of a cost reduction. And therefore, it can make a faster headway. So CNG surely makes sense in the middle term, not the long term. Provided the availability of OEM manufactured CNG heavy vehicles is abundant, and it is not so abundant today. They are not available off the shelf, or the waiting time is higher. And once the CNG filling stations are up to the mark, to give a driver to the confidence of the industry, then surely adaptation to CNG will be much faster. So you're right. CNG does provide the final consumer easier middle path on both the criteria. Cost first, that is how we are forced to look at it, and environment, of course, because it is a greener gas compared to the other fossil fuels. And in the long term, though EVs are a clear winner, nevertheless, a fair amount of support will be required there. So within city, with stress from OEMs that will come about now on manufacturing CNG vehicles, with filling stations coming in from the government at a faster pace, adaptation, I think, can be faster, leading to a mid milestone in terms of lower costs and greener exhaust, if one might call it. So maybe not all the way there, but interim, I'm sure it can give a good competition to EVs. That is how I look at it.
Yeah, I think a very good point made, given that the top 15 cities of our country are featuring amongst the top polluting cities of the globe as well. There is going to be, emphasis on shifting from diesel-based technologies. So CNG can provide a good interim solution while adoption of EV continues to gather pace. So, but Varun, I would like to, bring you over here. People are talking about multiple innovative business models from a charging standpoint. For example, we are hearing, and one of the most widely spoken point is speaking about battery swapping technology. People are also talking about mobile charging units that can help a stranded vehicle to get charged very quickly, or charging at unique points. Like recently, some of the European countries spoke about having charging points attached to every lamp post of the city. So every time a car is being parked and you go out shopping, the lamppost can be used to actually charge your vehicle. What is your view on these kind of technologies, and how easily are they adaptable from an India point of view?
Yeah, so very well question. See, as a whole, EV ecosystem is going to bring lots of innovative business models, not only charging, but the question is regarding charging, but there are other segments as well. So it is not only limited to on the charging. But answer to your question, yeah. So battery swapping itself is a part of charging. As I mentioned in first question, that everything is driven by demand. Means what is the requirement, and then viability and the challenges. So for small vehicles like two-wheeler, three-wheeler, battery swapping itself is a very good, you can say, providing a fast solutions to swap the charging station, and within a 1 or 2 minutes, you can change your battery or swap your battery. So there are right now lots of swap station operating across the India. And in future, I believe, especially two-wheeler logistics segment or commercial delivery segment, it is going to happen, because run is going to drive. For personal segment, I don't believe it is going to as a requirement, because their runs are limited to 20-30 kilometers. But for logistic or any commercial operator, it is a requirement, because nobody is going to compromise from a business if it is a commercial operation. So swap station is one technology. Then you mentioned on the innovation on the lamp post or portable charging. So yeah, that is also an innovative business model, because lots of until unless we are not able to figure out a charging station on a mapped distance, like 10 kilometer or 25 kilometer, whatever government is targeting. So we required a portable fast charge or any portable solutions to vehicle which are out of charge, maybe in midway or somewhere. So right now, some breakdown support companies, they are doing such kind of innovation, but not up to that level, because uses and technology is still on not up to that scale. Third thing is the lamp post charging or anywhere workplace charging, within a city charging. So government is also working, Indian government is also working with some affordable price range. So they are targeting at least for two-wheelers to make a EV charge point across all the cities. It will be a smart socket, but with a lower rating. It is not going to charge very fast, but for two-wheeler it will be a fast. So it is available. Even if you talk about a charging infrastructure, so itself having a 4-5 components where business model are opportunities are available. First thing is that OEM manufacturing, AC chargers, DC fast chargers. So okay, AC charger is not a big deal. Anybody can start. It will take time, but that is also a business model. Then the charge point installer, that is also a business model going to evolve with the time, with the numbers scale. If for home charging, for commercial charging, we need someone to install. Third is the software, where as Abhijit mentioned here, technology. So that is a backbone of complete EV chain. For a charge point operator like me, I definitely require to navigation, for my charging station, location of charging station, then booking, what are the tariff, whether charging stations are available, breakdown in maintenance. So all these things come through a platform, because hardware is just a dispensing medium. So that is also one unique business model with the coming. Then the service provider like charge point operators. So as a developing whole ecosystem, we can provide end services. So there are opportunities, there are innovative business models available, and in coming time, with the demand, because India is going to be, as Mr. Deb mentioned, I believe we are going to be third largest in couple of years. automobile market. So if you are targeting 30% transitions, so demand will come from different sectors, because we have a logistic, we have B2B commercial, we have B2C, Ola, Uber, same like platform. So everybody have their own requirement of charging. I'm telling you, it is not going to success by a simple public charging station. No, everybody will drive and looking for a ease of charging. Then only the whole ecosystem is going to work out. So lots of business opportunities, models are available. And with coming time, there is opportunities. Innovation will be a key driver for EV adoption, either from charging, from battery, or the unique solutions, because everybody wants to limit the investment on the EV, same time make it viable. So I believe these are going to happen in India, but yeah, it's a time taking. It is going to a transition phase. So next 4-5 years will be a crucial, where all ecosystem need to be worked. And we need not to compare with the other already developed market. So we have to give us our time. Definitely it is going to happen. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so great, Varun. I think that brings me to Abhijit, because, success of whatever, Varun spoke about is going to depend upon how the data is going to be available to the consumers or the users of the infrastructure. So Abhijit, again, from a charging point of view, what are the kind of use cases or solutions that your organization has been providing to clients, which help to smoothen the transition of the entire ecosystem?
Location technology is very horizontal because it cuts across these various ecosystem and the stakeholders, and starting from the users who would be using an electric vehicle. And I'm not talking about to start with, if you're talking about the passenger vehicles or consumers, the in-vehicle infotainment system, which is embedded. And again, as I said, like most of these will be EV will be connected cars. Because it needs to talk to various platforms, be it the charging set of information, pricing, booking of the charging station, etc., and last but not the least is the traffic information, because traffic information is a very important set of information for a country like India, because that's going to define the user experience, right? Because we might always define that it's charging would last for 80 kilometers, but it has to be a function of how of a traffic situation in a particular city or a country, and especially the large cities in India. So our technology, which is helping that particular user experience in terms of providing a right estimated time of arrival, or taking care of the range anxiety, and as I mentioned earlier, which is routing around the charging stations. So that is one part of it. The second is also the commercial vehicles. We talked about 3-wheeler, 2-wheeler. That's also where we provide the technology in terms of the various routing algorithms, which is more efficient routing algorithms, which then again gives the ETA more accurately the estimated time of arrival. And also when the platform decides pricing for any such journeys, be it say, ride hailing or delivery, etc. Because this is again those platforms who are going to demand supplies, a number of delivery riders available in a certain area, or the taxis for dispatch. These are a bit complex algorithms. It's not pretty straightforward as it might look like. So our technology platform that supports those kind of ecosystem. And last but not the least, there's a HERE platform. HERE platform, we have two functions. One is the marketplace. So any stakeholders like what Varun was talking about, so he can bring a set of data and put it in a marketplace and use that marketplace to take it to the other users, right? So it gives them a platform. And then we also provide workspace where such data or any such players can come and use that workspace and create a set of products if they want, and there will be other set of information. So it's an ecosystem play. There are very, very important ecosystem players, which Dr. Mukherji mentioned and Milind mentioned. So they are the core players in the ecosystem. And what we are doing is we are providing a technology platform to facilitate some of the experiences they want to drive. I mean, that's our role. And we are very horizontal in this ecosystem.
So Abhijit, an add-on question to that. So, Varun made a very important point about, is there an availability at a particular charging station, and what is the price at which a particular user can actually charge? And you made an important point about, providing a marketplace kind of a platform where, vendors can come and display their information. So a very, very layman question. If today I have an electric vehicle and I want to charge my electric vehicle, can I actually book a slot using a platform like yours? Surfing through various electric vehicle stations which are available. Where is a slot available, and at what price am I booking it? Is that possible?
So technically it's possible. We don't provide that services. There could be service provider using those platform can create a service.
Got it.
So that's
Right.
how those business model will evolve.
Sorry to interrupt. I think that question should answer by me. So, because slot booking comes under charge point operator. Okay, so that facility should be routed through any platform, because a charge point operator means we are a hardware, software, and service all together in a bundle solution, you can say. So charger booking or tariff availability, everything come through my platform to the end user, because he's going to use an app. It is not he's going to drive something else. So app is on some company who's a charge point operator like Volttic is having. But I can use the technology from, like Abhijit mentioned, where in route, what are the traffic, or I can share those information with other stakeholders, any OEMs or any fleet operator. But these facilities are right now available. It is already integrated, like in Volttic platform, it is there. You can watch what are the tariff available, because tariff also vary with the cities and time of day, because electricity charges are different. And you can book the slots, and with the slot booking, that particular slot time will be reserved for you. For your vehicle charging. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, so I think great insights, Varun and Abhijit, on that part. That makes me move to the last section, where we are going to dwell upon, the most important stakeholder, that is government. In this entire scheme of things, we all know that it is not going to be possible if it is not going to be a clear direction, both from the central and state government. So, Dr. Mukherji, this brings me to you. As an OEM player, you already mentioned that you are very appreciative about the direction in which the government has been going. But what is it that can be done more that can aid EV adoption in India?
Well, a lot. See, government has set the tone, but to go forward at a rapid pace and do it in a pretty organized manner, I think that is something where we generally fail. The program management or project management has always been an issue, and also given the landscape of the country, the geographical challenges, and also the various issues on ground, take a lot of time. And as a business people, as entrepreneurs, for us, time is extremely important, particularly in the context of new generation businesses. And things change fast, as pandemic showed us. It is never been taught in any business schools or any management courses how to deal with a pandemic. It has never been a textbook case, but it came out of nowhere and sort of created havoc all over. So coming back to your question, I think that one of the area where government really needs to play, and being a large, not a direct but indirect stakeholder, is the financing of vehicles aspect. You see, electric vehicles, the biggest challenge we have today is the banks or the institutions are not coming forward to lend to extend the vehicle loans and financing. And more than 70% of the banks today are public banks. So government has to play a role there, and certain policy level decisions could be made that it could be brought under prime lending category. Also, government should push the banks, unless the public sector banks, government banks come into this lending or financing. I don't think you'll get the scale. The private sector, so there are certain selective banks and institutions doing it, but the interest rates are extremely high, 20% and above. So it's an unviable business model for particularly the commercial vehicle segment. I understand they have their own viewpoint, but I think now we have demonstrated, particularly a company like ours, we have a robust technology. The vehicle is running, and we have ourselves, we extend a warranty of 5 years, and also to show that we know what quality we are giving. We also have our own in-house financing arm, is to to show these institutions. I think this is somewhere
Correct.
where the government has to play a role. Also, there is an issue of GST on the batteries. There is a differential GST on battery versus the vehicle. Battery attracts 18%, whereas the vehicle it is 5%. So we have a sort of offset duty structure. But I think in the next few years it will be taken care of. And also there are certain issues like without battery the vehicle has been allowed. We can sell it, but what happens and how to really go about the incentives. So that's certain clarifications are really needed. So I would really and also just on the to sum up, I would say that some of these procedures need to be made simpler and easier. You see, the Niti Aayog report itself shows that till it is 2019 August report, which shows that less than 2% of the FAME subsidy has been claimed till now. Less than 2%, right? So there is something wrong somewhere, and it should be. It should bother us that that money has been allocated and is not been used by the industry. So there is something that needs to be done. I think one of the things that needs to be done is probably make the stakeholders aware. See, we have had cases where in the states, when you go to the RTO level and try and get the vehicle registered, they don't know. They say, what is this? Ye kya leke aaye ho? L5 category. What is the L5 category? And all those things. So we have an issue. We have a serious issue there. And to make these procedures and these obstacles go away, only government can do it. It is in their purview. So I think a lot of representations have been made by industry bodies and all. So I only see that. I only suggest that and request that these should be streamlined. As you make the procedures simpler and user friendly, then only the the adoption will happen.
Fantastic. Yeah, so Dr. Mukherji mentioned 3 important points: procedures to be simple, battery GST versus vehicle GST, and incentive structures with or without battery vehicle, how it is going to function. Plus also, what is the kind of final utilization of FAME subsidy, and therefore, are we really doing enough? Fabulous points made. Varun, over to you very quickly. You spoke about, I think, 3 million charging points over the next few years. What is the kind of market opportunity that exists, or what does it mean in terms of rupees billion investment with those 3 million charging points? And do you believe that there is viability in the charging model? Is there something that the government needs to do to enable the charging infrastructure better?
Yeah, of course, there is a huge opportunities because 2.9 million is a big number, and this is on the study base. But as the natural adoption comes to EV right now, it is some sector is specific, not to all the sectors, mostly commercial. But personal segment will also come in picture by next 4-5 years as battery prices will come down, vehicle comes in affordable range. So we are same report is mentioning that 2.9 billion USD investment is required to build that kind of infrastructure. So opportunities is there, but yeah, right now the major you can say the first constraint or question comes on the viability, whether EV charging itself is a viable business or not. To answer that question right now, it is very difficult to make it viable because charging station viability is totally driven on the utilization, and utilization is directly proportionate to your number of vehicle at your charging station. So we need not to think of flooding the market every corner, every 100 meter a charging station, but same time charging station investment and the utilization is the dominant factor. Right now, if you talk about a commercial fleet segment, if you are putting a charging station for them, there is almost 30-35% utilization, and that is a good number to get your faster ROI. But in a pure public charging station, the ROI is quite late or low because of very less utilization. Right now, hardly 1 hour or 2 hours in a day. So even not up to 10%, 5%, some charger are even not utilized. So putting the charging station will be always a strategic business model. You need, see, charging station is not going to work on a standalone business model that like you put in a highway and there is no coffee shop, no hotel, nothing. So what people will do, even he is going to top up, so he need at least 10-15 minutes. So he need to spend some time. And for that, strategic location deployment is very, basic requirement like malls or highway, hotels, plazas, and all those things. So in that segment, driven viability case is always driven by the utilization. If your chargers are getting utilized 35 to 40%, you have a very attractive ROI, but that will take time by 25 or 26, next 5-6 years. It is not immediately. Now coming to the government given some FAME subsidies as mentioned by Mr. Deb, that is still not on the field, but yeah, FAME subsidies are available. So we have to channelize that properly. Financing of the equipment is also a challenge, like same like vehicle charging infrastructure, charging equipment financing is still not available. Banks are not ready to finance. Even they don't know what is this. Most of the banks, how to do that. They ask lots of questions and all those things. So that is a challenging. With the FAME subsidy, if it is properly distributed to between government agencies and the private player as well, because there are different route as well for EV charging operator, private and government. So you can get a subsidy on the capital cost of the equipment, because a public charging station on an average cost 15 to 20 lakhs on the equipment side. I'm not considering the land and the electrical infra. So if you get some subsidy 30-40%, so definitely your capex will come down. But even after subsidy, the business will be driven by the utilization, and that is where we have to be very strategic. We have to put a charging station with a viable location, viable business model, and strategic tie-ups. So this is a quick answer to your question. Yeah.
Okay, thanks Varun for that quick reply. Mr. Paranjape, I'll give you one chance on the things that commercial fleet operators are expecting. So scrappage policy was being announced by the government. Analysis done by CRISIL and a number of other reports suggest that scrappage policy may not have many takers because the incentive may not be sufficient to lure the commercial buyers to actually surrender their vehicles. If somebody combines the scrappage policy and then incentives on electric vehicle, it can be a fabulous combination to enable commercial fleet operators to graduate to electric vehicles. What do you believe can be done to ensure that scrappage policy and EV adoption can be merged together as a value proposition and can enable very fast adoption of EVs?
Thanks, Hetal, again. So again, I'm tempted to jump directly into the answer, but or the response. But if you give a minute to the discussion we have been having so far, what you will realize is that towards policy, there's a certain structure evolving during the course of this discussion itself, where there are, say, not more than 4 stakeholders. So financing came up, and RTO not knowing what L3 or L5 is, then charging stations not being viable. I did not think of this earlier. So, various stakeholders are bringing in their views. Now, EV is a tool to achieve 2 objectives. One is environment, that is carbon reduction in carbon emissions, and reduction in costs, finally, of course. Having said that, for industry, for business at the cost of repeating, the priority in the short term will always be the other way around. That is, first lower costs and parallelly reduction in carbon emissions. That is how it works. And because industry will always focus on this year's P&L and not 5 years down the line. So what I believe with this background is that we as a country and probably need to evolve a roadmap which helps us achieve our objectives of being creating a safer environment and being cost effective, with solutions which might not necessarily be mutually exclusive. So I think it is critical to evolve a structure around addressing this whole environment and rising fuel cost agenda. Maybe all stakeholders, that is consumers, transporters, standard vehicle OEMs, EV manufacturers, could probably be made part of a panel under the auspices of the government, of course, which will be the central driver. And a short-term, mid-term, and long-term vision or policy should evolve with their involvement. So regular discussions will also be important because things are evolving very fast in this technology, as we heard. So a quick thought on this while you were asking this question vis-a-vis scrappage. There are middle paths. For example, there are a few organizations that we are speaking to now that retrofit diesel vehicles with electric drivetrains. This will bring a few advantages. One, it's a frugal solution. Two, it achieves the same goal. You still have EVs on the road. You have your old vehicle which has been renewed and will thus reduce the scrap that anyway is damaging for the environment. You keep your chassis, vehicle chassis and body intact. The revived vehicle will be a zero emission vehicle. And the owner, who is the transporter, will incur lesser expense than purchasing a new vehicle. So this was one thought on probably something that could happen, along with the possibility of scrappage. Scrappage as a policy, standalone policy, I have some views being from the logistics industry. What I have believed over some time now, when Mumbai, for example, decided not to allow more than 8-year-old vehicles to enter, scrappage, I believe, penalizes or puts pressure on the weak player in the market, which is the transporter. The transporter finally is at the bottom of the pyramid. He is the subsistence player in this whole value chain. The customers who sit somewhere at the top of this pyramid need to drive this whole thing. So I think industry and customers need to be incentivized to use EVs with maybe tax benefits, incentives, flame, whatever else is being discussed. Disincentivize non-usage. Maybe CSR could become a good tool in the hands of policy makers.
Correct.
So
yes.
I would say maybe it is important to look at ways which are not mutually exclusive and fit the overall Indian ecosystem. Like someone said, we might not be able to follow what might happen elsewhere, especially given the present scenario of COVID. Scrappage is one of the possibilities, along with multiple other options that I think should be considered separately. So talking to all the stakeholders transparently and then taking this forward is, I believe, a very important move that the government should do, along with the thoughts they themselves will have.
Wow, so a very new perspective, retrofitting electric vehicles, something that I had not heard until now. So thank you so much, Milind, for that perspective. My last question now, before we take audience questions, goes to Abhijit. Abhijit, any last lines for Government of India in terms of, what kind of technology best practices can they adapt to ensure that this entire monitoring, functioning and transition to electric vehicles actually becomes, a much more smoother journey? So, what do you believe is your technology's experience in ensuring this circling up of technology usage?
Yeah, so see, the starting point of a location technology is or location platform is the getting the set of information which is required to deliver the services, which is location.
Correct.
So they recently, during Q1, the government of India published the new geospatial policy, which is really helping to get this set of data, the location data, and also timely publishing of the data. So the stage has already been set, and we're thankful for such policy, because as the connected vehicle, talking about an EV or connected vehicle, and to provide the such of data, the data needs to be very updated. It has to be very, very recent, because all the experiences we talked about will not get delivered if the data is not very recent.
Correct.
So that is very, very helpful. So overall, that is the starting point. But as the ecosystem evolves, we will get to know more. Probably use cases potentially evolve as well, and that's how we will see that in future.
Yeah, thank you, Abhijit, for that short and simple answer. I think we have heard on all the sections. I feel that this session can go on. We can have a second round covering a number of other stakeholders which we have actually left out. I see questions on recycling. What about availability of minerals? To a certain extent, Dr. Mukherji touched upon on that. And therefore, non-cobalt based batteries, for example, transition on that side. What about financing of vehicles? So, we can have actually round two with the other set of stakeholders and understand that perspective. But for right now, I'll pass it on to Bala so that we can take up some questions from the audiences. Over to you, Bala.
Thank you so much, Hetal. Thank you so much. And thanks to all the panelists as well. I mean, that was a very, very intriguing, insightful, and a very purposeful discussion, I would say. As you indicated, Hetal, I think a lot of questions related to a number of other topics which we're actually not decided to focus on today. But I'll go directly into the questions, though we're already at 4:30. I'd probably give one question to each of the panelists, and then probably one common question at the end where everybody can share your views. Okay? Starting with Dr. Mukherji, has EV adoption in the two-wheeler and three-wheeler segment happened at the expected pace? If not, why not, despite all the government subsidies? Maybe you can pick out top two areas which need to be addressed to drive better growth.
Yeah, Bala, thanks. I will keep it short. It is a big discussion in itself. But if you go back, say about 5 or 6 years, the EV adoption or the transition in India started with the three-wheelers. But unfortunately, these were the low-end, cheap, Chinese imports, etc., which actually did, bring in this whole visibility of electric three-wheeler. But at the same time, they were low-end, and they also sort of created this illusion that EV is not a stable vehicle, not a high quality technology per se. And that is the problem we have today, convincing financiers and others, because they feel that, oh, that this vehicle won't last more than 6 months or something. So this is a problem. Same way it happened with two-wheelers as well, low speed two-wheelers, which were bought from China, etc. So yes, the answer is the EV adoption, to my mind, has not happened at the pace or the numbers that we should have had till now. But going forward, I do see a momentum, and now serious OEMs, coming into it, people, OEMs with the R&D, technology, product development, and the necessary infrastructure required to be an automotive OEM. They are in the field now, and I do see, next few years, it will be a game changer for the industry.
Thank you, Dr. Mukherji. Abhijit, there's one for you. Is the Indian EV market ready or mature enough for advanced location technology, or would your solutions be part of the growth drivers for EV adoption in our country? How do you look at it?
It's a very great question. So, which comes first? So will the technology drive the adoption, or otherwise? But I think it's not either or. It will go together. The location technology will help some of these experiences and change management and some of this anxiety to take care of. And then plus in the current ecosystem, which is already operating, or the scale which is already operating, location technology plays a role anyways, or can play a role. So it will be, location technology will be a key stakeholder in the EV adoptions going forward, and we look forward to work with various stakeholders in this ecosystem to support the growth of the EV adoption.
Interesting. Thank you. Milind, one thing on the, since you're a logistics service provider, there is a lot of action happening on EVs, as you indicated, from a different perspective, from the customer perspective. What kind of a change will EV bring on the workshop, and the maintenance, and the aftermarket side of the business? This is something we've obviously not touched upon. Probably we felt it was too deep to go into for this discussion. But just giving a chance to one of the audience, somebody from the audience who's asked this question. How do we bridge the competency gap that might actually come into play?
Interesting question. So I'm not a technical person, so I'll answer this from a user point of view. I think basically EVs would surely have low maintenance needs, given the very commonsensical conclusion that there are lower number of moving parts. So the need for maintenance will be low. Nevertheless, yes, the gap in the market is there. And like my co-panelists are saying, this is an evolving business. We are just, as of now, talking about charging, financing. We are talking about a 5-year warranty where the OEMs themselves are taking care of the maintenance of the EVs. Soon enough, this will evolve into a situation where you could outsource your maintenance, probably moving away from the OEMs, because they would always be limited by their reach and the necessity to build a financially viable model. As things grow and as people understand EVs more and learn to maintain them and understand what needs to be maintained in an EV, the capability will grow in the market. So this whole thing would necessarily go hand in hand. Things will evolve, and we would, I'm sure, in a couple of years have enough qualified people in the market who are able to bridge this gap very easily. So I think it is not going to be such a big issue. It will happen with time. Probably this is, I believe, the least, the least of the tough parts of the EV ecosystem, and the fastest that would be responded to. That's my belief, of course.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's encouraging. That's a very positive view, Milind. Thank you. Varun, there is a question on standardization. In fact, there are 2 questions on standardization. The first one will go to you. The second one, Dr. Mukherji, you can probably take it after Varun responds. What is the work happening on standardization as far as charging infrastructure is concerned? That's for you, Varun. Similarly, on the battery side, Dr. Mukherji, are we seeing some standards being drafted from the government side, from the policy side? What is the kind of work that's happening? Varun, on the charging side, please.
So for the charging side, there is already standards in place. There is no doubt on that there is no standards available. So in India, actually, just to promote, we develop a low voltage technology that is Bharat DC, you can say Bharat AC as well. So chargers are already in place. It is approved. You have 3 models or 4 models, you can say, to get a AC charging or DC charging, like Bharat AC Type 2. And then on the fast charging or moderate side, it is Bharat DC01, CSIS2, and check demo. GPT is used, it is a part, Bharat DC is a part of GPT. Some buses earlier old GPT, but right now most buses are on CSIS2. So in coming time, CSIS2 is going to be a most favorable on the fast charging side and Type 2 charger. Only it's a 3-4 standard, people get confused, but it is worldwide use. It is not only in India. Like if you go Europe or US, there is also CCS, check demo, Type 2 chargers are available. Same way India also approved, so standards are in place. OEMs are complying, and with the number of charging station coming in time, you will feel that like Type 2 charger, you will mostly see at home chargers, real estate, or at your workplace. Fast charger, CCS2, check demo, you will get on the commercial places or fuel station anywhere. So standards are in place. It's there is no doubt on that. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Mukherji, on the battery side.
Yeah, on the battery side, as you know, lithium-ion batteries, there is a safety issue that, and thermal management, thermal runaway, etc. we need to take care of. So there are standards in place. The BIS, Bureau of Indian standards are there. The batteries, the pack has to qualify on those standards. IP67, which takes care of the water leakage, what do you call, the dust, etc. ingress test. So those tests, I mean, the specifications are in place. These are pretty much at par with the global standards. So I think on that part, we are good. Once the battery starts, the cell manufacturing starts in India, I think we will see more clarity. And also I am very optimistic about the efficiency part also. I think the whole energy efficiency has to be looked into in a very sort of aggressive manner in the context of electric vehicle. It is not just that you pick up a motor and a battery and the vehicle starts running. We need a very specific engineering approach, R&D approach, and I think the energy standards also will need to be in place as you have for electric appliances, 3-star, 4-star, 5-star ratings, something like that. I'm really looking forward to something like that. Yeah, thank you.
A very good direction that's ahead of us, right? We'll probably take one common question. It can also be probably your final remarks from all of you. What are your thoughts on the vision of 100% electric vehicles by 2030 in our market? I mean, how practical do you think it is? And or if you feel obviously 100% is definitely impractical, what is your view? How do you see the rest of the decade, for EVs in India? You'll probably start with Dr. Mukherji, and the rest of the panelists can also share their views, including Hetal as well.
Well, that's a tough one. 100% electrification by 2030 is certainly very, very, wishful thinking. If it happens, I would be the happiest person. But as you know, especially in the context of Indian automotive market, India is a pretty unique market. Take in the case of cars, the two top players occupy about 75% of the market share. So, unless they come out with the electric product, the scale will not come. It is difficult. Having said that, it is also a disruptive technology where I think we will see many non-legacy players to come into the fray, companies from IT, software, electronics. We already see, Ola is coming up with an electric vehicle, and Foxconn and other, Apple maybe. So I think there is a chance for everybody. But I do see, 100% by 2050, probably. That's pretty much a safe bet. And I would say in certain segments, 80% plus by 2030, like 2-wheeler and 3-wheeler commercials. That's my take.
Practical, yeah. Practical. Abhijit, you want to give your views on that?
Yeah, so I mean, very difficult to give a percentage, but I can just maybe a couple of lines on the trend, what we see in a multiple market, and which Dr. Mukherji mentioned about. It's a disruption. So there would not be limited to the traditional OEMs which we have in the market. There will be new players potentially coming in and disrupting it, and especially 2-wheeler, which has already started, and many markets, 4-wheelers as well. But we've seen in the Western Europe and North America as well. So that will be the trend, and that will probably drive the EV market, and then the market will respond to that.
Let's your take in your final words, maybe. Yeah.
Were you asking me, Bala?
Yeah, your views on the same.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think instead of jumping to a conclusion on whether 2030 is the right target, the questions that come to my mind is the how and what of it, I think, which our panelists are an expert in. So whatever the target, whether it is 2050 or 2030, what is the path to get there, and what needs to be done to get there? I think that is what will define the, whichever target we choose. 2030 does sound optimistic just now, but working from home did not sound like a possibility 2 years back. And today all of us are working from home, and we adapted to it like, let's say, fish to water, to use a cliche. So it's a target. The hows and whats need to be answered. And we have a lot of experts, a lot of talent in the country. With the right support, nothing is impossible, is how I look at it. But a tough one, though, as of now.
Varun, how do you view it? I mean, from a charging perspective.
So, see, 100% is not possible. That is a clear cut. I think everybody understand that. And recently, I think this is a old target. Now it is around 30% what government is targeting adoption. But what I believe right now, putting some kind of target is not going to make a sense what percentage we are going to achieve. What I believe is the self-adoption, which is going to take place by next 2-3 years, when people have a confidence on the technology, confidence on the EV and the charging infrastructure. That is going to be a key driver for the faster adoption of the EVs. When we started, nobody was ready to believe on the EV. They say, what are you doing here? You don't know, there is no chance of EVs. And right now we are in a place, everybody is talking about EVs. So within a couple of years, there a drastic change came and disruption is there. But yeah, adoption is the driver. So by 24, 25, with the, see, Indian market is totally driven by affordable, even in commercial segment, even in the personal segment. So affordability, even for the charging infrastructure in a reasonable price tariff, EV in a reasonable price tag, then it is going to be a self-adoption, and then 30-40% is not a big challenge to reach by 2030. 100% will take time because we have an infrastructure challenge, we have lots of other issues, big geography. But yeah, what I believe it is somewhere between 40-45%. 2024, 2025 will be a key year to drive and have a clear-cut, understanding on what is the percentage. Yeah.
Hetal, you want your views and close the discussion?
Yeah, at CRISIL, we do the tracking of this industry on a regular basis, and I believe that there are 3 strong pillars to this entire adoption thing that is being spoken about. 1, government and the support that it provides. 2, you are going to have viability, cost viability, which is going to make it an attractive value proposition for the users. And 3, the consumer himself, who is going to be much more matured and evolved, and in a way could surprise us, as we go ahead over the decade. So, the force of these 3 pillars is what is going to drive the adoption of electric vehicles. And obviously, looking at the force that is coming from these 3 pillars, there is an external pillar, which is going to be the supply from OEMs. And number of launches that they would come up with, kind of tie-ups that they will enter into to ensure availability to the players. And that then will drive adoption. 100% is something that the government also changed its stand, but 30% also looks under number. So you could see a number much higher than that. And segments like 2-wheelers is where you will see adoption to be first. Followed by that, you will have 3-wheelers, LCVs, and the buses segment. And last would be the passenger car segment, where inertia from the users might be much more higher. They'll wait, test the market, and then they will start adopting. So that's the way I look at it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Including remarks. And as you had indicated, I think this is a topic we can, keep speaking on and on. Probably we should definitely look at part 2, get the other set of stakeholders as well, and carry on with the discussion. But I would like to thank all our panelists, Hetal, for moderating this session, seamlessly. Dr. Mukherji, thank you so much for your time. Abhijit, Milind, and Varun, thank you so much for taking out time, for sharing your views on this very, very interesting topic. And special thanks to Here Technologies as well for making this session possible, and to all our attendees from across India and also from other parts of the world for tuning in, sharing your views, sharing your comments and questions as well. As always, we aren't having time to take up all the questions, but as promised, all the attendees will receive an email with a copy of the presentation used by Sulaizah, and also contact details with which you can reach out to our analysts and experts who've shared their views today. So with that, we bid goodbye to all of you. Thank you very much once again. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye bye. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.